Viewers of Rising, we know you will be relieved to hear the Food and Drug Administration greenlit the updated COVID-19 boosters Monday for people 6 months and older in an effort to provide fuller protection against the new variant XBB 1.5 ahead of a possible winter uptick in cases. Third-party advisors to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention are set to make recommendations today about who should get the new shots manufactured by pharmaceutical giants Pfizer and Moderna. The non-mRNA option has not been approved as of yet.
Meanwhile, the Gray Zone's Max Blumenthal shed light on Moderna's profit boost, no pun intended, from its COVID vaccine. He wrote, Moderna went from brink of failure to big pharma titan thanks to the mandates and propaganda blitzkrieg that prompted untold millions to take its junk vaccine. So now it's able to sponsor Shot of the Day for the rare athlete who refused to take the shot. He was referring, of course, to a image of men's U.S. Open sponsored of the men's Open, which was sponsored by Moderna, in which Novak Djokovic, who famously refused to get vaccinated, he had won, did not get the vaccine, and there was that. It was a Moderna's Shot of the Day. It was sponsored by Moderna. The clip. It was very, very amusing. Meanwhile, of course, retired Dr. Fauci still making the cable news rounds to tout the safety of the vaccines. Let's watch.
Feeling is that I believe certainly those who are vulnerable, the elderly and those with underlying condition. But I believe we should give the choice to people who are not in the high-risk groups to have the vaccine available for them. Because, again, we have experience with this type of vaccine in billions of people. It's a safe vaccine. Of course, with the mRNA, there's a very, very, very low risk, particularly in young men, of getting a myocarditis. But if you look at the risk of myocarditis from COVID itself is greater than the risk of the vaccine.
Okay.
And so.
But see, I don't understand that talking point because, sure, the risk of, even for the most at-risk group, it's true that the risk of COVID inducing myocarditis is more than the vaccine, even for the group that's most at risk from the vaccine. But you can get the vaccine and still get the vaccine. It does not prevent you from getting COVID. We will tout its benefits in reducing severe disease and the risk of death among the very vulnerable, especially, including the immunocompromised and the elderly. But it's not really the way Fauci and others posit there. It's like a one or the other, but it's not a one or the other because you can get them both.
If you get COVID, not only do you have the risk of myocarditis, you have the risk of being hospitalized or dying.
Right.
If you get the vaccine, you have just the risk of myocarditis. That's the cost-benefit analysis he's trying to point out. So if either way you're going to get myocarditis, you're likely to get myocarditis, or there's the same possibility, or slightly more of a possibility of getting myocarditis from getting vaccinated.
The myocarditis risk from COVID is just out there to be encountered, whereas.
Right.
You don't have control over that.
As is the risk of dying or being hospitalized from COVID. So if you are wanting to protect yourself against the possibility of being hospitalized from contracting COVID, but you're worried about myocarditis, basically it's a toss-up for you, and you can go ahead and get the vaccine, and you'll get the protection from the hospitalization.
We can move on from this, but let me just say what I'm saying one more time. You will face it's a choice to face the very low, admittedly, low risk of myocarditis from the vaccine is something you choose. But you can. So if you don't get vaccinated, you don't face the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine. You will face the risk of myocarditis if and when you get COVID. If you get vaccinated, you're facing the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine, which is low, but you're facing it, plus the risk of getting myocarditis from COVID because the vaccine isn't going to stop you from getting COVID.
Right, but you don't have the risk of being hospitalized.
Right. But they shouldn't bring up well, there's also a risk of myocarditis from COVID because that's not an argument for the vaccine.
No, it's an argument against people who think that they're going to be able to avoid myocarditis one way or the other.
I don't think that's what Fauci's trying to argue.
It seemed like it to me. It seemed like he said exactly what you've been saying for the last year or so about how people who are in lower risk categories can make their own cost benefit. The vaccine should be made available to them if they want to go ahead and take it. But if they're in a low risk category, they don't necessarily need to take it given the risk of myocarditis. It sounded to me like he said exactly what people have been wanting him to say this whole time. And I understand if people are frustrated that it's too little too late. But is there any acknowledgement that he seems to be reflecting what the science has borne out over the years and why it was that you were and so many others were opposed to mandates? He gave statements, I can't remember now if we included him in this clip, but I think in the same interview said that he thinks that mandates are gone and that it's good and that they're not going to come back. Again, because of these reasons, that the vaccine is not a sterilizing vaccine, that people can make their own cost-benefit analysis, especially for people in low-risk groups that are unlikely to be hospitalized in the first place. Isn't that what everybody wanted out of him?
Yeah, that's all good. Again, I'm just saying, it sounded to me like he was saying because the risk of, we don't need to, obsess over this, but because the risk of myocarditis of the vaccine is lower, that's a reason to get the vaccine, when it's not an either or, because the vaccine doesn't stop you from getting COVID, even if it has these other benefits. I thought that's what he was saying there. Maybe I'm misinterpreting. I've certainly.
What about all the other things he said? What did you think about his comments?
I'm glad to hear that from him. Look, and I'm glad the FDA approved this. I absolutely support the FDA and the CDC making it easier for you to choose to decide whether you want to get the vaccine, to tell you what it thinks the benefits are, and then to leave it up to you. I don't want the FDA to gatekeep whether people have access to this. Now, I was looking at, so it's targeted at this XBB.1.5 variant, which actually is not the dominant strain anymore. Obviously, it was at the, they're trying to, it takes so many months to get it ready and approved. They think the strain that is dominant right now is related enough that it will have some protective effect. Obviously, we don't know that for sure, but they have some reason to think that, so we'll see. Look, again, I think it's up to people, and it always should have been up to people, but especially now, we're moving into the, get it if you think that's best given your health profile or when you've had COVID last. Look, I believe in full disclosure. I probably will get it when it's available. I'm not very concerned about the risks of the vaccine given my age and health profile. I'm not really concerned about the risks of COVID either, but I'm susceptible to respiratory illnesses, so I would rather, even if it doesn't end up helping me at all, so be it. I'm not really worried about the downside. So that's my calculation. If yours is different, that's totally fine with you, and it should just be left to people. Yeah,
I do wonder in the void that kind of mandates and a more affirmative COVID policy has left behind, if people are going to find themselves clamoring for more protection and in terms of interventions that will help protect themselves, start clamoring for the government to intervene and impose and provide the air quality standards that were supposed to be provided with the government allotments as part of the COVID programs in schools and the like. If they're going to be clamoring for tests and masks and things once it's clear that the government has stepped all the way away from this, I wonder if we're going to end up in a place where there seemed to be some criticism from some of the people we quoted in the segment of the government funding the manufacture of these vaccines in the first place, which my critique of the pharmaceutical industry is a little bit different than that. But, do we want to end up in a place where they don't actually manufacture enough vaccines to be on standby in case we do have another surge and a real pandemic issue, and we end up in the place we were with monkeypox, where there had been a decision not to keep the vaccines on store when they expired, not to re-up them because it cost a couple $1 million. And as a consequence, there was this real risk that this new disease was going to be able to spread in a way that was completely preventable. Or like we saw with some of the manufacturing issues with baby food, the supply chain issues that we saw all over the place with respect to COVID, have we learned the lesson that it's good to have stores of some of this stuff just in case? Or is the attitude that this is a government enriching a private industry going to be so strong that people are arguing against even doing additional research or trying to keep provisions on hand in case things get worse? I'm curious to see how this is going to play out and if anything pivots as the government takes a smaller and smaller role in protecting people against COVID.
We shall see. That does it for us for today. Tomorrow on Rising, California Representative Ro Khanna will be back here with us. We'll also, of course, be bringing you all the other important news of the day.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the move, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.